This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to Sleep Seminar Part 1. Keep in mind that this is a Part 2 series. And so I'm glad you're here tonight because we will not be sending out the recorded version by email. You'll have to really attend the seminars to get the full seminar, but if you subscribe to our YouTube page, it's there. I also want to remind you that if you have questions, just throw it in the chat, and myself and Sandy would be happy to go through those questions with you. So Sandy Grant, who has her BA and is a registered holistic nutritionist, she provides, as I do, but has for many, many years, nutritional counseling and management and training to groups, individuals that really want to change their life and get rid of lifestyle disease. Health is the greatest of all human blessings, and I'm sure Sandy would agree that to be in this industry where you can help to give somebody's health back, you feel like you're giving them their life back, and they feel it too. So it's such a privilege. She also does workshops, seminars, and she does wellness retreats as well. So and they're phenomenal. She is a graduate of McMaster University and the Canadian School of Nutrition. She's also launched a magazine and has published a book called Eden's Plate, an amazing cookbook that I still use. I keep going back to it. She's also, which is where I really got to know Sandy, she is the founder and director of the Durham School of Health and Nutrition. So this is a private Christian college, but open to the entire public. And that is where in a one-year part-time course, there's also, I believe, a fast-track program, but she can talk more about that later, where you can actually become a certified holistic nutritionist through her course. And it's done by webinar, so you don't physically have to drive anywhere, as you know, with this world today. But she has some great, incredible knowledge. She lives what she teaches, and she teaches extremely well. And so today she's going to share one of the 8 laws of health that you see me sharing a lot with a lot of people at all the time. And this is what I teach, which is sleep. And so today we're going to learn the science behind it. We're going to learn the practicality of it. We're going to learn the physical aspects of sleep. And then when we come back next week at the same time, she'll get a little bit deeper into some natural remedies and some natural things that you can do to help with sleep. So at this time, I would just like to thank you for being here. Thanks, Sandy, for being also here with us tonight and next week. And Sandy, I'll just turn it right over to you.
Okay, well, good evening. Good evening to everyone.
Evening.
Good evening. Oh.
Can't hear.
Sandy, I muted you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
My mistake. I totally muted you. That's all me. Go ahead.
All right.
Touching technology.
I was just saying hello, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. I am delighted. It is always a joy and a privilege to share this most vital and life-saving information to everybody. And I just want to say thank you to Carolyn for your invitation to be here, and to congratulate you on the work that you're doing and just touching and blessing so many lives, and the testimonies that are coming out as to the wonderful things that are taking place as a result of you sharing these very simple remedies, approaches to a better life, better happiness, greater joy, deeper experiencing in the essence and the meaning of life, the wholeness of life. And I just want to again congratulate you and continue to wish you ongoing success in the work that you're doing. And hello to our audience. Thank you for coming. Obviously, you want to learn how to stay young, hopefully feel younger, You know, we should be adding life to years, not years to life. So I
Amen.
just want to, again, congratulate you and to invite you to transition with me very quickly as we talk about this significant, highly significant subject, one of the laws, no doubt, which is the one that is often forgotten and the one that we get so much out of for doing so very little, and that is sleep. How exciting is sleep? It's not the same as nutrition, where we show you how to do tofu cheesecakes and healthy carob candies and all those wonderful things that we consider pleasure foods. Um, but even to get down to the basic things, you know, how to make salad or salad dressing, as basic as that may be, it is still far more exciting than thinking about sleep. Yet, without sleep, we're as good as dead. As a matter of fact, it is in the state of sleep that we are most like dead, in that we're in a state of unconsciousness. So let us talk very briefly about some of the major topics of discussion in this very simple, seemingly simple topic, but oh so necessary. And so we're going to begin by asking you to participate as best you can. And I will ask you by the show of your hands, how many hours of sleep are you getting? Are you well rested? Is there a difference between sleep and rest? What about relaxation? These are some of the topics we're going to cover tonight. And of course, I believe the program is set up so that you just hold your questions, perhaps put them in chat, and then we will try to answer as many as we can at the end of the program. All right. So again, how many hours of sleep are you getting per night? Are you rested when you wake up? Does this look familiar? How many of you use one of those? Yay, nay? No, I see heads shaking. Well, you know what? The truth is, in my humble opinion, they should be thrown into the garbage and never taken back out, because these are the very things that cause us to begin our day startled and stressed. And it is the high level of stress that's causing most of us to experience sleeplessness. And yet it's the very way that many, if not most people, begin their day. So, how important is sleep? And are we getting enough sleep? Let's find out if we are indeed restful or
Yeah, you
so.
muted yourself for a second there.
Okay, if you are sleep deprived, you will need an alarm clock in order to wake you up. Or you may be sleep deprived if you need an alarm clock to wake you up. If you rely on a snooze button to wake you up. You may be sleep deprived if you have a hard time getting out of bed. You know, you get up, but you just can't get out of bed. So you linger for maybe half an hour, sometimes even an hour. What about feeling sluggish in the afternoon? Getting sleepy during meetings, lectures, or warm rooms or spaces? What about getting drowsy after a heavy meal? And maybe not even a heavy meal, but a substantial meal, one that you should have. Or how about when driving? Do you need to take a nap through the day? Do you fall asleep while watching TV? And of course, TV meaning good lectures, educational programs, sermons, etc. Or do you fall asleep just sitting and relaxing in the evening? Do you fall asleep or do you feel the need to sleep in on weekends? And how many of you do sleep in on weekends, by the way, whether or not you feel the need to or not? What about, do you fall asleep after being in bed for only 5 minutes? In other words, as soon as your head hits the pillow, you're off. And what about our cognitive functions? Are you slow thinking? What about reduced attention span, worsening memory, perhaps poor or making risky decisions? Uh, you may be lacking energy, feeling moody, going through mood changes and feeling levels of stress, anxiety, irritability, dementia. I wonder if there's anybody in the room who has not been touched somehow by any of these. And you know what? If you don't, um, if in fact you do, don't feel badly. Um, it's not good that you are compromised, but it's good that you can acknowledge where you are. Because the first step in change is really to acknowledge, to recognize and acknowledge the need. Because if we don't recognize it, if we keep denying the fact that this does not happen to me, it doesn't exist, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to keep going and going and going and headlong. You're going to be in a worse situation. So it's important that we're honest with ourselves, because without this very necessary experience, our, should I say, lifestyle modality, lifestyle, uh, uh, important part of our lifestyle regime, we're not going to be well. We're not going to be, if we're not sleeping well, we're not going to have a sense of relaxation. And we're going to be caught most impactfully in this whirlwind of chaos and distress and everything else that's going on around us. And all I need to say is the word COVID. And I'm sure it will bring everything into perspective, the uncertainty of the future, the isolation, the health concerns, the financial forecast, or should I say financial downfall that is in the forecast, housing crisis, movement restrictions. These are all situations and conditions that most definitely, if we were not suffering from stress before, they most definitely would create an added dimension to whatever our mental makeup will be. So yes, anxiety, fear, stress, fatigue, all those things and more are pretty much what we are facing today as a people globally. And we need to be at our optimal to be able to weather the storm, so to speak. And most definitely, we're going to look at the concept of sleeping and making sure we're building good resistance and good immunity to these challenges that are that we have to confront with on a daily basis. So, how important is sleep? Um, Many of us try to sleep as little as possible. There are so many things that seem so much more important, or perhaps more interesting than getting more sleep. We tend to go to bed late and get up early. Many people are sleeping for less than 6 hours per night. The average person we know generally needs about maybe 7 to 8 hours. Genetically, it's been identified that maybe about 10% of the population needs over 9 hours of sleep, believe it or not. And about 20% will need approximately between 5 and 6. But for the most part, the majority fall within the 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And I'm sure if I were to do a poll, most of you, most of us, myself included, would not be getting 8 hours of sleep per night, 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. So it's something that we tend to relegate to convenience. And when we think about health, we think about nutrition, we think about exercise, we think about water, etc., etc. But sleep is the one thing that we tend to cut short to make sure everything else is done. And yet, without sleep, we're going to be basket cases. And it doesn't matter what we do or how much we achieve or accomplish. If we are not sleeping, we're not resting. And if we're not resting, I can assure you, the end will not be a pleasant experience. So sleep is what we need to make our priority, believe it or not. And the reason why we need to focus on sleep, if I can make that a priority, is that in order to sleep, we need to rest. And if we don't know how to rest, we are going to be miserable. We are going to be miserable. And that is a surety. So please, when you think of the word sleep, it's not interchangeable, but sleep does lead to rest. Okay? And we're going to talk more about rest next week when we talk about the applications of getting good sleep and the benefits of experiencing both sleep and rest. So the one thing, again, we need to remember is that the quality of our sleep directly affects the quality of our waking life. We can go hard and we can go fast, but we can only go so long until it catches up. Our mental happiness, our sharpness, acuity, productivity, our emotional balance, our creativity, our physical vitality, and even our weight. For those of who may be struggling with weight management, more often than not, folk are eating because they're tired. And why do you think we're tired? Because we're not sleeping. And so instead of going to bed, we go to the refrigerator, trying to fill our lack of energy with calories, with food, when in reality, we're just simply sleepless. So you'd be surprised to see how many disease conditions can be traced back to sleep, including the fact that without sleep, our immune system is not going to have the strong, especially the cytotoxic T cells that it needs to maintain good immunity. And especially in this time of COVID, we need our fighter T cells, our cytotoxic T cells. All right, so please, our growth hormone is dependent on good sleep. And I'm trying to, I'm so sorry, Okay, so quickly we're going to talk about what is sleep, the effects of sleeplessness, what are the benefits of sleep, and then we're going to talk about sleep mechanism, which is really stages of sleep, and basically how it affects the brain, or should I say the brain's role in sleep, and how much sleep do we need. And next part, we'll talk about how to promote good sleep. We'll talk about serotonin and melatonin, arginine, vasotonin, and some other neurotransmitters that the body uses to produce good sleep. Okay, so again, is there a difference between sleep, relaxation, and rest? Most definitely. Relaxation is what we need to maintain a calm and quiet spirit, to maintain good objective outlook. Relaxation is what we need to de-stress. And so it must be an experience that is central to our daily routine. And there are actually techniques that we can use to relax ourselves. And again, we'll talk more about the hows next week, as opposed to the whys. This week we want to look at the whys. Okay, so relaxation is a vital part to having good sleep, and so it must precede sleep. Sleep will lead us to true rest. So in order of the body's response mechanisms, we need to have relaxation as we're going to bed. That could be a warm shower. That could be just, loosening your muscles and shrugging or stretching, whatever it is. But we must relax as we go to sleep. And as we go to sleep on time, we will experience good rest. Okay, now, definition of sleep. What exactly is sleep? It's a period of rest for the body and mind during which volition and consciousness are in partial or complete abeyance. So consciousness are in partial or complete abeyance, which means that we are unconscious for the most part, and other bodily functions suspended, meaning, again, we're now operating on automatic pilot, if you may, the autonomic nervous system, which means we are not conscious. We are unconscious, which is the state we're in when we're dead. And we know what that state is. The dead knows nothing. There are certain idiosyncrasies about sleep patterns and behavior that we can get into, but in the interest of time and given the scope of our presentation today, that we won't get into those discussions, like sleepwalking and things like that. By the way, you're not conscious even when you're sleepwalking. Let's talk about what sleep is supposed to be in order for us to experience the benefits. It must be a condition that creates rest. Remember that word rest. That is the underlying condition, objective of sleep. It is to experience rest. So it's a condition of rest for body and mind where the following occurs. Now, this is dictionary definition. So if I could modify this, and I would suggest you do, you should put in there a condition of rest for body, mind, and spirit. And when we're experiencing that wholeness of sleep, we will we should be sleeping, or should I say, for us to experience that whole experience, that wholeness experience, it should be several hours of sleeping every single night. And we want to make sure we go to bed at the same time every single night. One of the things the body loves to maintain good health is regularity. So we must go to sleep every single night at the same time. And ideally be sleeping by 9, if not in bed by 9. All right? And we'll discuss more of that next week. The nervous system is relatively inactive while we're sleeping. It means that as we prepare to go to bed, we should engage in spiritual exercises, prayer, sing songs to the heart, songs of calmness, whatever it is that is going to calm and appease the mind. And that's why we're told we should never, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, because it means we will not have a quiet and calm nervous system. And every disease condition is actually initiated by a nervous system response. The nervous system is the first thing that is affected when disease conditions come. When equilibrium goes out, when homeostasis is affected, it is the nervous system that is controlling all that. It's no wonder why so many people are distressed and nervous and dysfunctional. Even when it's not obvious, it is there. Our eyes must be closed. So we can't be sleeping with our eyes wide open. Our eyes must be closed. Our postural muscles, meaning the peripheral, the limbs, must be relaxed. We must in a state of ideally lying down, and our muscles must be relaxed. and we must be unconscious. So consciousness must be practically suspended. If we're not having those characteristics, it means that we're not getting full, wholehearted sleep. And I'm going to hurry through this as quickly as I can to allow you time to ask questions. All right. So sleep serves to regenerate and rebuild the body's cells. It actually clears waste from the brain. Now, you may know that the body's drainage or lymphatic system is what moves waste through the blood system and takes it into the areas of elimination. So we have specific elimination organs, namely the colon, the kidneys, the skin, et cetera, et cetera. But the brain doesn't have lymphatic tissues. So it has its own system of clearing waste, and it's during the night that the body is able to, and during sleep to be specific, that the body is able to clear waste from the brain. So if we're not sleeping well, we are going to be experiencing brain fog. We're going to be experiencing inflammation, because whenever there's toxin in the system, there's going to be irritation of the cells. There's going to be, and whenever there's irritation, there's going to be inflammation, because that is the body's response to cell injury. You're also going to experience hypoxia. You're going to experience lack of oxygenation to the brain. And so you're going to wake up and you're going to feel very groggy and tired, simply because you have not slept well, because the brain hasn't properly detoxed. When we sleep well, we also support learning and memory, for the obvious fact that, everything is cleansed, everything is restored, and is ready to go for the next day. Fueled up, ready to go. And by the way, if we're exceptionally hungry, going to bed, we're not going to sleep well, because the brain needs energy throughout the night, and it does not store its own energy. It only has about a 3-minute supply. So it has to be in the blood system to be able to draw on that, although it is basal metabolic function. But it is still, and so the activities slow down, especially the cerebral cortex, that slows down its activity to minimize the stimulation of the senses that would stimulate the brain and cause wakefulness. So the activity in the cortex slows down to allow minimal penetration of light or any stimulation at all to the brain centers that are responsive. So the brain is a very complex organ. And as we will see in a minute, that although, the other organs rest, the heart rests between beats. It's look dup, rest, look dup, rest, look dup, rest. In other words, beat, rest, beat, rest, beat, rest. So in between each beat, the heart is actually resting. In between respiration, inhalation, one round of inhalation and respiration, and expiration of respiration, the lungs rest. So after every exhalation, the lungs rest. The digestive system is supposed to be empty, largely, so that when we're sleeping, the body's actually detoxing and not digesting. It should not be digesting. So there needs to be sustained energy in the blood based on proper dietary, and we can talk about that next week. So even though the stomach is empty, the blood should still have a reservoir of glucose to sustain basal metabolic processes. And so the brain itself needs we need to make sure that the brain has what it needs, the detoxing and the nourishing. We need to make sure, or should I say, another benefit of sleep is that it regulates mood. If we're not happy, if we're not rested, we're going to be agitated. And if we're agitated, it's going to be demonstrated in some form. It could be just a glance, it could be even a thought. Because when we are not rested in our minds, we cannot discern spiritual things. And if we don't have that connection, we're not going to be happy people. we're going to be stressed, we're going to be we're going to be uh, we're going to be anxious, we're going to be mentally tired. So again, good sleep helps us to maintain rest, and rest helps to regulate mood. It affects the flow of hormones that are taking place in the nights, especially when we talk about melatonin. Um, Definitely serotonin, we know to be our our um, um, our happy hormone, so to speak, that which helps us to stimulate good attitudes, etc. And in the presence of serotonin, we know we are able to produce a good supply of melatonin, which also serve to relax and calm and rejuvenate the system. So sleep helps to stimulate certain hormones that the body needs and uses, not only to maintain physical health, but mental and emotional health. And of course, our mood is going to affect our attitude. It's going to affect our attitude. And if our attitude is affected, our character is going to be affected. And most definitely, it's going to affect appetite. As was stated before, oftentimes we confuse our lack of energy for the need for food. It also affects our libido, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some basic things we need to know about how food affects us in very simple ways that oftentimes we can't make the connection as to why we're feeling certain way or doing certain things when we're good people, when in reality, what we are just lacking is sleep. So let's talk a little bit more about understanding what sleep is. It's, as mentioned before, it's not a time when the body completely shuts down. Or it is, the body shuts down, but the brain itself doesn't shut down. And I mean, the heart is still beating. The the body processes are still going. So the body doesn't completely shut down, but most definitely they go into a basal state of, of activity, which is a dormant state. Everything slows down significantly. The brain, on the other hand, does not rest. It just keeps going and going and going. Yes, there are certain parts of the brain that will definitely reduce their activity, again, to make sure the right hormones are being secreted, et cetera, et cetera. The pineal gland, especially, is exceptionally sensitive to light. And anything coming through the eye, any light that goes through the eye, and it could be just a night light in the room, it could be light from the TV that we're falling in front of, etc. And by the way, when we fall asleep in front of a TV or anything that is audible, whatever is being heard audibly is going into the brain unfiltered. Because even though we are in an unconscious state, there is still there is no frontal lobe presence to filter it. So that is a very dangerous thing to do, to fall asleep in the presence of any kind of media, a TV especially, or music that we are unable to be conscious of and be able to filter what it is that we don't like and what we do like, and therefore be able to file that information appropriately in our memory. When there is no consciousness, that information is still getting in, and we're unfortunately not conscious of it and therefore cannot filter it. Very dangerous practice to fall in front of the TV, because there is what you call subliminal conditioning. Much is being communicated beyond the threshold level. And even when we can perceive it or suspect it's there, when we're sleeping, we don't have those protective mechanisms at work. So be very careful about um, the state of our sleep, where we fall asleep, when we fall asleep, etc. But most definitely try to avoid turning on a TV. You should never have a TV in your bedroom. And even if you have a TV, whatever is coming through that TV needs to be something that you know you're going to approve. So when we're sleeping, even though the body is in pretty much a state of restfulness, the brain continues to work, and it does that because if it doesn't do that, we won't be refreshed for the next day. It has to um, allow that inactivity, even at the basal level, to again um, manufacture and to allow certain hormones to be secreted so that we can be ready and prepared for the new day. One of those hormones that the body produces extensively during the night sleep is actually melatonin, as was mentioned before. Now, this particular hormone is secreted between the hours, is at its peak secretion between the hours of 2 and 3. So again, if we're not sleeping during those hours, there's some people who go to bed and they wake up, say at 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, and can't go back to sleep. If we are not getting our maximum store of melatonin during those hours, we are going to be deficient, even if we're sleeping in hours outside of that short block of time. So it's not only the duration of time, but when we sleep, that is going to affect how well we are, how rejuvenated we are, how mentally we are for the following day. And remember, we really cannot, we don't store melatonin. We only get a 24-hour supply. So if we're going night after night after night on short supply, it is going to significantly make a difference in how we feel the next day. And over time, we will literally fall apart, as is mentioned here. If we regularly skimp on sleep, and especially not getting the 2 to 3 hour the sleep between the hours of 2 and 3 a.m., we are going to be short on that one particular hormone that is such a strong antioxidant, that is such a strong um, fix and rejuvenate hormone, that we are going to feel the difference in a very marked and significant way. Mental breakdown, physical breakdown is on the horizon if it continues over time. It's like having a car and not changing the oil or not servicing the transmission or doing these regular checkups. The car is not going to last long. It doesn't matter how expensive the car is, it needs to be serviced regularly. And every night, especially between those hours, are the peak hours of those significant hormones that we need to rebuild our body. Also, between the hours of 9 to 12, and this is something you probably know like the back of your hand, the body is doubling up on its sleep quality in terms of its ability to process your mental thoughts, rebuild secrete growth hormones. So at different times throughout the night, your body is producing different hormones and different neurotransmitters that you need to sustain you the following day and to promote sleep itself. So, we can't just focus on, okay, I need to go to sleep and make sure I'm in bed between 2 and 3 so that I can get my melatonin. It's not just the melatonin that we need. There are other hormones, the growth hormones for immunity, etc., that we need in the early part of the evening, of the night. That is vitally important. So no one thing is more important than the other. I'm just highlighting some of the well-known and much the significant ones that the body uses in a very significant and plentiful way. But also is the body is also producing just a whole slew of different neurotropic factors and hormones that it needs to build and regenerate its tissues. So technically, when we talk about sleep, we need to know that a lot of what we that goes on in our body is happening in the brain. And unfortunately, we don't have time to go through a whole lot of what I had hoped to discuss. But to share with you very quickly, the body does go through different stages of sleep, and it does start with the slow wave sleep, which is what we call non-REM sleep. And of course, this is initiated in the hypothalamus of the brain, which is a very central part of where most of the unconscious behavior of the body is housed and regulated. So the hypothalamus, where we'll find the pineal gland, is very significant in our ability to sleep well and to rejuvenate. The pineal gland is what governs the secretion of melatonin, and it is also the organ that helps to control the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm basically is it's like a pacemaker, if you may. It regulates the body's natural processes that include things like temperature, metabolism, the release of hormones. And we have this 24-hour clock. There are other rhythms, by the way. There's a circadian rhythm, which is a 7-day cycle, etc. But the 24-hour rhythm is what the body uses to govern certain hormones and certain other body processes that are vital in the everyday ongoing functioning of our being. And so this circadian rhythm is actually affected by light. And as the light comes through the eyes and hits the retina, and by the way, the retina does produce melatonin, believe it or not. So anything, especially in the early daylight hours, is too much to say in too short a time. But as the light comes in through the eyes and hit those optical nerves, transfers it to the pineal gland, the pineal gland will help to regulate that circadian rhythm and stimulate the production of melatonin in the presence of total darkness, by the way. So anything that interferes with the production of those hormones, namely light. Now, light will stimulate the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is what stimulates, or should I say, regulates the circadian rhythm. It is the rhythm that controls the wake-sleep cycle. So in other words, it tells the body to sleep at a certain time in the presence of light or in the presence of darkness. So it tells the body when to sleep, when to wake up based on the amount of light that is penetrating and hitting that particular gland. And I know some of you probably have questions. That's fine. Just hold on to those questions and I'll take them momentarily. So the light exposure is central to the influence of the function of the circadian rhythm, which helps to regulate the various body functions, including metabolism, hormone release, et cetera, et cetera. And it's important to know that without that day-light combination, the body would not have an accurate regulation of when to secrete what. So depending on what's happening, if it's light or if it's darkness, the body will regulate itself accordingly. So if somebody is locked in a cell, say in solitary confinement, and there is no light, that whole system is going to be disrupted. They will not be able to regulate on a 24-hour because they're not getting that day sleep exchange. And the amount of light compared to darkness, that helps to regulate that gland. Okay. So I know you probably want me to explain, because I'm sure it's a little muddy for you, but hold on to your thoughts, we'll come back to it. So again, our hormones are regulated by this wake-sleep cycle. We talked a little bit about melatonin. GABA is another neurotransmitter that the body needs and uses to calm itself in terms of its effect on muscle relaxation. It helps to sedate. And it's really just another chemical that the body uses to regulate, like a switch that the body uses to either secrete, stimulate the secretion of some hormones, or in the case of other neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, adrenaline, etc., will turn on certain processes to promote sleep. So these neurotransmitters are designed to either turn off or to slow down the activities of some cells, or they will do the opposite, or similar or other neurotransmitters will do the very opposite, which is to stimulate and to promote activity. Either way, the body is intelligently designed so that either it slows down a process or it speeds up a process, all in the production of sound and restful sleep. All right, so we talked a little bit about how non-REM sleep start, which is the slow wave sleep. And in this stage of sleep, actually, let me just jump to the next slide. There are two stages of sleep, the non-REM as well as the REM. And I'll just walk you through the various stages of the non-REM, and then we'll talk very quickly on the REM. And we don't have a whole lot of time. I wonder if perhaps we could just speak very quickly to this, and we can stop here. So in the concept of the stages of sleep.
Sandy, I don't want you to rush it because this is incredible information, but I also want to be sensitive to people's time. So even if we have to do a part 3, we can, but you know, don't rush through important information. I do want to finish at 8:30. If people have more questions and want to linger further, that's fine. But yeah, feel free to take your time. And if we need part 3, we can do that.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll take about 2 minutes and just explain this slide, just to tie up the loose ends, so to speak. And then we can come back and elaborate more and perhaps clarify. So in the stages of sleep, the body goes through certain activities, and it must go through those activities in order for it to go through a cycle of events that will allow total processing mentally and physically. So in these 2 stages of sleep, we have, in the first stage, we have what's called non-REM as well as REM. In the non-REM sleep, we have a stage 1, which is transition sleep. That is the first few minutes of getting to bed. And we'll come back to this and elaborate more. In the second stage of sleep, of the non-REM stage, we have light sleep. And this is what happens for the first few minutes after that initial transition into a state of consciousness. This is where the eye movements stop. The heart rate slows down and the body temperature decreases. So in the first, in N1, which is transition sleep, the eyelids are still slowly moving. The muscle activity is starting to slow down, and we are easily awoken. It's you know, if somebody touches us, calls our names, if we hear a sound, it's light, very light sleep. Stage 2 is still light sleep, but we're becoming significantly more unconscious as the eye movements stop, the heart rate significantly slows down, and the body temperature decreases significantly. In the third stage of the sleep, even though it is still non-REM, it's difficult to be awoken out of the sleep. And if you are awakened out of the sleep, you're going to feel groggy and miserable. You're going to be disoriented. And it will take several minutes to get us to a state of full consciousness. This is the deepest stage of sleep. And in our brain, everything starts to slow down extremely. So you get these very large waves, very slow and yet large waves of sleep. And the blood flow is shunted away from the brain towards the muscles. And we actually there is physical movement. And there's a reason for this. The physical movement is designed to keep especially the heart, very active and the blood circulating, because as the heart slows down, the circulation also slows down, and it means that all kinds of things could go wrong if the circulation is not maintained at its optimal, even though we are sleeping. So everything slows down, but the muscles start to move, and that's when we start to twist and turn. And that's just, God's way, nature's way of ensuring that the heart is being supplied with the blood it needs and every other organ. And in the last stage of sleep, which is what we call REM, this is where we call dream sleep. And this is where now the muscles, the skeletal muscles, become very inactive. But the dream, this is the dream sleep. This is where we start dreaming, and the breathing gets shallow. Our eyes are moving rapidly. This is why we call it rapid eye movement, otherwise REM. And the blood pressure goes up, and everything else is paralyzed for the most part in terms of our voluntary movement. So this is significant. At each stage of sleep, we will most definitely be benefited, and the body's going through different stages of the sleep. And we'll come back in our next presentation. We'll come back and explain the benefits that we receive at each of the level of the sleep. And by the way, our stages of sleep. And by the way, the body literally cycles through about 4 to 5 times of the cycle. So it goes 1, 2, 3 REM, and then it starts over 1, 2, 3 REM, 1, 2, 3 REM, and it goes through this for a few cycles. And if we do not complete the exact number of cycles that is required to process information, to store information in the brain, and to allow everything to be compartmentalized, we do not have one, good memory, we do not have good state of restfulness, etc. So during sleep, even though we are quote unquote unconscious and sleeping, the brain is very busy and it's very active doing the work of sorting, organizing, translating, transferring information, so that when we get up, everything is fresh and ready to start a new experience. So we're going to pause here for now. We're going to come back and look at some of the greater benefits to each of these stages and what we can do to promote maximum sleep.
Awesome.
And on that note, let me say thank you. And I know you have a lot of questions. I don't know if they're in time for that.
Well, there is time for those who want to hang on. If you have to leave, it's right at 8:30 right now. So if you have to go, no problem. But for those who can stay, Sandy, there are a number of questions in the chat, 2 of which are mine. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, we can maybe linger for another 15 minutes or so for whoever needs to go or stay. And then we'll go through some of the questions. And Sandy, thank you so much. I feel like I'm back in school again, and I'm got my notebook out, and this is so excellent. And so we will not be emailing out the presentation, but if you subscribe to our YouTube page, you will automatically be notified once it goes on there. So that's how that will be. So Sandy, was there anything else before I start? I'll go into the chat and just put the questions at you.
And no, at this point, we can just jump right into it.
Okay, all right. So I'll just go through the questions in the chat. So mine was the first. It just says, I get a lot of clients who, I mean, I tell them no noise at all. And I have a lot of clients that say, oh, I only use white noise. And I say no noise. There's so much science on white noise and that it's okay. Can you speak to that at all?
No, it's not okay, because white noise is not picked up, not because we are not affected by it, but because we have grown to become desensitized to it. In other words, when I'm sitting here, or you're sitting here, or you're sitting, and you are wearing clothes, you don't feel your clothes. You are totally oblivious, totally unconscious to it. But the skin is still sensitive to the fact that you are you are touching. There is stimulation, and that is being fed subliminally into your consciousness.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question was, when we wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock to go to the bathroom, but then as soon as we get back to our bed and we fall back asleep again, and I know I'm a culprit for that because I terribly drink a big cup of tea sometimes on my way home, and I'm just like, what did I do? I'm going to wake up at 2 to pee. But you know, as soon as I hit my pillow, I fall back asleep as well. So this doesn't happen every night, but for some people it does. So the question is, if you fall right back asleep, does this still have a bad effect on our hormones?
It does. Anything that interrupts the cycle, remember, 1, 2, 3 REM, 1, 2, 3 REM. Anything that interferes with those cycles is going to interfere with the production of the hormones and others that we haven't talked about.
Okay. So we need to make sure we're not drinking that big mug of tea on our way home from work. Fazila had asked, and I think that maybe we're also answering. She has a couple questions. She has a digital alarm clock. She turns her phone off, puts it on airplane mode, which is excellent. But you do wake up to check the time so you don't sleep in after 5:30. So that is, yeah, whenever you're like subconsciously, I have to get up, you're not getting into that deep sleep. You're actually creating stress. She says she needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep to function well. Okay, so I think it's more so comments, but yes, Fazila, for sure. Your phone should be in another room if you're going to constantly wake it up to. But I'll tell you, and Sandy, maybe you can speak to this, but if you don't have an alarm clock and you're stressed out all night while you're sleeping thinking, is it time to get up? Is it time to get up? It's probably less stress for you to put an alarm clock on than for you to be so afraid you're not going to be getting up and you don't sleep all night. So I know neither are good, but for somebody all night to be like, oh, waking up every hour, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? I mean, that's just torture for yourself. So if you have to use an alarm clock and you will then sleep better, I don't know. What do you think?
All right, so that's telling us we need to choose the better of two evils. The bottom line is we want neither. We want neither. You see, the body is a creature of habit, and it will do what you program it to do. So if you're accustomed to using an alarm clock simply because you're not, your system isn't regulated, when you go to regulate that system and you take the alarm clock out of the room, your body's going to have to learn to adjust. And that's exactly what it will do, but you need to give it the time and the conducive environment for it to reprogram itself so it can respond the way you want it to. It doesn't lead you, you lead it. So to keep the alarm clock there is really just to perpetuate the experience, and that's the very thing that's preventing you from being healthy. No, better you go through that period of transition. And you know, I'm going to tell you, as a Christian, I've learned to pray in such a way that, believe it or not, there was a time in my life when I would feel a little tap on my hip, believe it or not. I would feel a little tap on my hip, and I knew that was the angel saying, Sandy, it's 4 o'clock. You need to get up. You need to go study. You need to do whatever. And I know it was him because I was not spooked. And if you knew me before, if anything touches me, that and there's no one in the room, I'm not going to be a calm person. So yes, I know when God's presence and spirit is with you, there is oneness of spirit. So when you pray and you ask God to do some miracles, work some miracles in your life, He will. So you better be prepared to see those miracles.
Amen. We have a question from Sabrina. What can shift workers do to have better sleep? Rotating from day shift to night shift is not an option right now. So other than a sleep mask, what other methods can be used? And I do know, I use a lot of things. I've gone to the emergency room in the middle of the night, and I'm grateful, that there was somebody there. So it's not good that we have to work at the night, but some people do. In order to put bread on the table. So any suggestions, Sandy, besides a sleep mask? I'd say
Um,
earplugs as well. I tell my husband to do that. He's a light sleeper. Put earplugs plus the mask.
so here is what I would say to you. You know the ideal, and you need to strive for the ideal. Sometimes we find ourselves in positions where we feel like we have no way out and we have to go through the grind. And if that is our conviction, then we can only live by our conviction, right? At the end of the day, there's an element of faith that is oftentimes overlooked in our decision making. And I believe if we were to look more carefully at what that is and how it should play out in our lives, we will see that oftentimes we limit the power of God in our lives. So for me, it's not an option. It's not an option. And I know somebody has to be there in the night, but let it be the other person. And my prayer is that I will not, or any of my loved ones will not have to go and create that, put that burden on that person who has to man that place, because it's not an ideal situation. And I should look after myself so that, God forbid, that I should get sick, or if there's an emergency, that I should have to go there. But my prayer is, Lord, help me not to go there. But if there needs to be someone there, and I don't want to sound mean, I don't intend it to be so, um, I cannot jeopardize my health. Um, and it's not an emergency. If I have to respond to an emergency, I will, at all costs. But it's not a role that I would take up knowing that it's destroying me. That would
So
create
not
more
everybody's
injustice than the
and
job
not
itself.
everybody's on that path, Sandy. So like, what is there anything that you can recommend that I would say, I would speak to that and say, make it routine. Even like, don't sleep at different times. Always come home and sleep. Your meals will have to change so that your lightest meal is still coming in. And I would also recommend that you don't go to Walmart and go get groceries and then come home. Come home and sleep and don't do like 4 hours sleep. Wake up, do a few things, sleep a little bit before work. It's important that if you do have to work the night shift, hopefully for a short period in your life, that you make it dark, quiet, and routine. You're always getting to bed at the same time, and it's that full 7 to 8 hours. Is there anything besides, of course, the mask and the earplugs that you would add to that, Sandy?
Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you what I've been telling folk for years, as long as I've been in this industry, over 20 years. Pray for deliverance. And
Okay.
while you are praying, you may have to set out a fleece. A fleece. You'll be surprised to know what options are available to us when we step out by faith. Again, as I can promote sleep, I must promote the other laws that work in conjunction. And none of these laws are isolated. We have to bring them together, or we're not going to see the optimal result. In terms of the practical suggestion, Carolyn, by all means, those things will help. But nothing more than what you've said. I really think in this situation, I see too many nurses. Most of my clients are nurses. I
Yeah,
don't see,
they're not
I don't,
well.
yeah, most of the people that come to me are
Not a
nurses,
nurse,
registered
so her job
nurses.
is very important.
Yeah, yeah, and they're there, but they're also very sick. And
Yeah.
most of the problems I see is digestive disorders. And that's just the beginning of sorrows, really,
So
because
thank you,
digestion leads
Sandy.
everything else.
I just want to get through some of these questions. So Jacinta brought another good question here. She considers herself a light sleeper. I know that I'm the deepest sleeper in the world. When my kids were babies, my husband would be nudging me saying, "You don't hear them? They're crying for your milk. I don't have any." But no matter what time in the middle of the night, I could say, "Honey," and he'd say yes. He was like the lightest sleeper. Now that his diet has changed, he's not a light sleeper. But Jacinta says that she considers herself a light sleeper. So does that mean she's not getting REM sleep?
So, sorry, the question was, she's a light sleeper. What does she
She's a
do?
light sleeper. So does that mean she's not getting REM sleep?
We can't, um, we can't do cause and effect until we see everything that is a part of the whole package. So in making any assessment to any situation, we need to see the big picture. We need to hear more. We can't just say, oh, this is happening because of that. We need to see what else is going on.
Okay.
Yeah,
So somebody, yeah, go ahead.
most people who are light sleepers are people who are not mentally restful. And yes, the light sleep it's like a tautological cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last question, well, Hesborn was asking how we'll be sharing the seminar. So it's just going to be on our YouTube page. So just if you subscribe to our YouTube page, you'll get a notification when it's there and live. So the last question, I always wonder personally, so it's my question, people that dream and people that don't dream. So I like go to a different planet when I sleep. I'm just, my dream is so real, it's so vivid. I wake up and I'm just like, and I don't use an alarm. I'm just like, what day is it? What time is it? I mean, my sleep is, I dream so hard. Where I talk to other people, or if my husband wakes up, but I'm just like, did you dream last night? He's like, no. So does that matter? Is it just your mind, or does it depend on your sleep?
It does matter. Um, Everybody dreams. Most people cannot remember their dreams. Um, People who have an overactive mind during the wake hours will usually have more vivid and more dreams that they can remember. And it's because the mind is going overtime. When we are not restful, we will have very, very active sleep. And the mind is the sleeping is really just, sorry, should I say dreaming? It's really just your brain, your body, your brain, to be specific, trying to sort out what has gone on the day before and what's going on in your mind. So the more it has to sort out, the more vivid those dreams are going to be.
So it's not good that I'm having very, very like real dreams.
Well, I don't know what you mean by real dreams. I know I dream, but my dreams are very unique. There are times when I dream, very rarely do I remember them, but the occasional times I will. but there are times when I go through what feels like a macro burst of information. It's like a flash of information and it's gone. And I know at those times that is the Spirit of God speaking to me, a very clear message that is always, always a reality. So I know my sleep pattern, I know what's happening in my brain, and I can speak to that. Everything else I can tell you is about what I get from the textbook or from research. But definitely, you will know yourself, and you will know if, for instance, if you're an avid dreamer or vivid, I believe is the word you use. I'm not sure what that means. If you mean very clear pictures, or if you see very long outplay of a panoramic scene, an event, something futuristic. For me, those macro bursts are usually futuristic.
Yeah.
So I know that. I don't know, what information you're seeing and how it plays out into your reality.
It's just sometimes very foolish, sometimes it's meaningful, but I almost always dream, but I always feel like I'm gone to a whole different planet. Like it's just like it's so real. I wake up, I don't remember most of anything. I just know that, like I feel like I'm such a deep sleeper that I'm just dreaming so vividly. But anyway, so I just am asking, is dreaming is a good thing or dreaming is a bad thing? And it sounds like you're saying that dreaming could be one or the other.
Well, dreaming, generally speaking, is unless it's orchestrated and inspired by God Himself, unless there's a message like we see in Joseph in the Bible, dreaming is your psychic's way of organizing and processing information.
Okay, got it.
That's basically what it is.
Interesting. Okay. Sandy, thank you so much for being here. And this was so informative. We look forward to having more information next week, 7:30, next Thursday. Hopefully we can just keep it to a two-part series, but there's so much information, we'll have to figure that all out. But thank you again. And if you guys would like to see this seminar again, take some more notes, just subscribe to our YouTube page. So God bless you guys all and have a good night. And thank you so much, Sandy. There's, by the way, tons of comments, which I overlooked, but very informative. And thank you very much. And love this webinar so much. So there's lots and lots of good feedback. So thank you so much, Sandy.
You are most welcome. It's been a pleasure.